Hey, welcome to Watchmen Waiting on the Lord. Today is July 10th. There's a lot of stuff happening in the world right now. A lot of natural disasters happening. I just went through a whole lot of different stuff that's happening right now. There's a lot of floods right now. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. The title of this is "What did the Apostle Paul mean by joking?" About joking, coarse joking. And then after I finish what I've written, I'm going to bring up a topic, and it's an interesting topic that I discussed with somebody today. I didn't expect I would, but are Jews still the chosen people? So I'll get to that. Okay, so let's see where I'm starting here. Okay. I think there are so many disasters happening right now, so many political, weather, everything you can think of, that I think it's important for everyone who watches this and to say this to people, that you should focus on the gospel, right? Like you see all the signs out there, you see all these different disasters, and you just know. Like I know in my heart, like I can see a train coming. I can see a person on the tracks, right? They're turned the other way. They've got their headphones on. I saw this in a video, and there's a train coming. There's a train coming. So unless you're serious about God, I don't think you're gonna like this subject. What I just said there. What does Paul mean about joking? This is my own interpretation. The answer immediately is how pure is God? It's about purity. This is about God's nature, not yours. He wants you to reflect Him. He's holy. In one version, I tend to stick with King James Version, and I go over to New King James Version because I find it a lot, smoother, and it rolls along easier. So it says in one version, it says jesting and coarse joking. That's Ephesians 5 verse 3. So I don't read anything but New King James Version and King James, so I can't speak to all the other versions. Jesting in the Greek is called eutropelia, which means vulgar and obscene. Sexual joking is another. It's not hard, so that'd be obscene, sexual. It's not difficult to understand what this means, but I'm going to expand on this topic. Let's read where this Bible verse originates in Ephesians 5 verse 3. Therefore be imitators, so this starts off at 5. Therefore be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ also loved us and gave himself for us, an offering, a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. But fornication and all uncleanliness or covetousness, like jealousy, let it not even be named among you, as it's not fitting for saints, neither filthiness, nor foolish talking, nor coarse jesting, which aren't fitting, but rather of giving of thanks. For this you know, that no fornicator, unclean person, covetous man, idolater has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and God. Let no one deceive you with empty words, for because of these things the wrath of God comes upon the sons of disobedience. Therefore be not partakers with them. And who cares what they call you, if you don't join them. This is a continuation, I think. Walk in light. For you were once darkness, but now you're light in the Lord. Walk as children of light, for the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. finding out what's acceptable to the Lord, and have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. But all things that are exposed are manifest by the light, for whatever makes manifest is light. Therefore he says, awake, you who sleep, arise from the dead, and Christ will give you light. So I write, in Western society, you got to make sure this is recording. I just went on a long walk. In Western society, we're so used to swearing, joking in sexual ways, joking in hurtful ways about other people. The list is extensive. Most Asian countries aren't like that. I find most Asian people have proper manners. I'm not saying all, right, because of the way they were brought up. That's the way it used to be here not so long ago. I was brought up by Christian parents who were proper and strict. I'm glad because it rubbed off with good manners. Joking has been around as long as people have been, I'm sure. Today it's more acute and out in the open. I'm sure most people in the West would call me a snob or whatever it might be for even discussing this, but God has blinded them to understand the reasoning. That was the world I used to be in. TVs and movies have normalized this through slow desensitization and depravity. I remember all these things are coming to an end. I remember when hearing swear words in movies was a big deal about 30 or more years ago. I remember sneaking into the theaters when I was 13 years old. What Paul is saying in this passage is key to a Christian life that actually pleases God. Many say that we can't please God, but I don't agree. I know he watches everything we do. His eyes watch the earth. So that should matter to you if you're serious about God. You know, when people say we're filthy rags and all that, okay, well, I think God does watch us. The Bible clearly states the things that pleases God. You know the saying that we're filthy rags to God, because I think that's in Isaiah. That may be true, but it doesn't mean God doesn't have his eyes fixated on justice and righteousness. Works don't save us, but we can still please God. Pleasing God isn't a work. If you're doing it just to please him out of an unsure heart, maybe that would be a work. You won't catch me swearing anymore unless I stub my toe or somehow end up in some big argument. And it does happen. I've witnessed some Christian YouTubers' journeys with swearing. Like, you know, when they first begin their YouTubers and they're talking about swearing, and then all of a sudden they're not, you know, like maybe a year later. And I suppose they're arriving at the same conclusions as I am. The more you learn about the nature of God, these things turn you off. It turns a spirit off inside you. My family was proper, and you wouldn't hear swearing that often. When I first heard swearing in any amount was in school around grade 5 and 6. It was cool to swear, I remember that. And when you heard it, you're like, oh, you know. So I was around, 9 to 12 years old. Swearing in TV shows and movies was rare. I remember having to sneak into certain movies because it had swearing and soft porn scenes. It should have stayed that way considering the way we are now. I like old-fashioned. Now all the young children have to do is Google body parts of pornography and it's there. They just have to go in their libraries now. Everywhere you go, it's normal. I would swear around my friends quite a lot and other groups, but I wouldn't do it at home unless it was just me and my brother. Swearing was just a normal thing. As far as parents, it seemed to vary from family to family. Pardon me a second, I'm getting out of breath. Just give me a second. Yeah, I swore and made sexual jokes myself, but I don't now, and recall many times growing up feeling out of place when a big group of friends. So I hung around big groups of people, not near the end, but and there was a lot of sexual jokes. It's one thing when you say a joke like that, and it's another thing when they just keep on continuing. No matter how proper you are, some jokes are too difficult to not laugh at. I had a troubled childhood through school in grade 7 and 8. I was out of control with my language. I was class clown in grade 7 and 8 because I had a hard time in school. Maybe it was the way I was brought up, but after that, the same old jokes, like sexual jokes, I started to feel uncomfortable. It was like one of those group things where people just follow others. I'm not as relaxed as other people. Not just because I have pain, because I grew up that way. I have autism, but that's not what I mean either. And I do suffer with trauma, but it became easier to spot and to not identify with that behavior. I just didn't. People don't know that about me, but we'd sit around joking around and stuff. I just didn't want to be part of it. To be honest, I like serious people. I like when people get things done. This all pertains to this. I had a hard time growing up because all the people I was hanging around with weren't doing much to further their lives. I love my friends. That was and that was me too, but I'm just looking back. Not to put my friends down, but it didn't help me grow. How can you create and learn in an environment where others around you don't take things seriously? So this all pertains. I understand what Paul means, that it's ungodly and impure, but they follow the same parallels. If you had to pick one of two ways to live for the rest of your life, which would you pick? If you were forced to live with one or two people for the rest of your life, would you pick a vulgar, loud person or someone with manners? And I don't mean without a sense of humor. Personally, I'd pick manners any day of the week. There are UFC fighters, so like cage fighters, who have deep faith in God. I've seen them and won't even swear. They'll say fudge. It's not what others think about you that matters, it's what God thinks about you. How about loud and vulgar women? As a man, how do you feel about women who are like that? Many of us have been through, and I'm not trying to pick on women, it's just an example. It can go the other way, but I think it is a bit different for a man to see a woman who's like that. So how do you feel about women like that? Many of us have been through the swearing phase. What I'm pertaining to is loud and obnoxious women. Is that any different? We all know that person from our past, and now we try to avoid like the plague. So I'm going to read you some verses here. Proverbs 9. Foolishness is like a loud woman. She doesn't have wisdom or knowledge. She sits at the door of her house at the highest place in the city. So I'm not purposely trying to pick on women, just making you understand what is right and wrong in God's eyes, pure or impure. You tend to attract like-minded people by avoiding these things, and I'm not saying a joke is a bad thing. How would you feel if how would you feel if you were dead set on studying the Bible? You go to a Bible study or on Zoom, and your pastor every few seconds makes a joke. Would you want to continue with that pastor? I recall one of my friends asked me if I wanted to sing while he played guitar, and he'd say that quite often. One day I said, okay. I wasn't a bad singer when I still had my voice. I'd never jammed before, and I was looking forward to it. When it came time, he didn't take it seriously, and it turned me off. So, for the same reason, that's how smart people get rich. by taking everything they do seriously and avoiding those behaviors. And what I mean when I compare that to Paul is living a pure life. Be holy because God is holy. If someone doesn't like that, have nothing to do with them. Proverbs 23:9, don't speak in the hearing of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of your words. Proverbs 16:18-21, no surprise, Proverbs, eh? I thought I would add this verse because of LGBTQ pride. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. We're going to see that, I'm sure. I'm not threatening either. Better to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. He who heeds the word wisely will find good, and whoever trusts in the Lord, happy is he. The wise in heart will be called prudent, and sweetness of the lips increases learning. So that's that. I'm seriously breathless right now, but I'll take a small break here. I'll take like a 15-second break. Yeah, I'll take a 15-second break. And then I'll read this. Are the Jews still the chosen people? Obviously, this can be quite contentious. I understand that, and you can only discuss this with someone if they're, down to earth and not going to get in an argument with you. Before I start this, I just want to let you know, you already know likely that I don't believe in a 7-year tribulation. Daniel 9:27, I believe, is all about Jesus Christ, not about a covenant with anyone. So that does pertain to this. I have nothing against people who believe that, okay? But I just happen not to. So I don't believe in them having to fill the last week of Daniel, and that is very important to what I'm saying. Excuse me. So so I just finished a Bible study with someone, and I felt challenged by it. We didn't purposely come up, but it did, and I want you to tell me what you believe and why. The question is, did God abandon the Jews, or will he save them in the end? In the comments, write why, what you believe, if you believe in the, that they have to fulfill their transgression. I believe that transgression has already been fulfilled, but write whatever you want. I see what you say about this. Did God abandon the Jews, and will he save them in the end? So my friend, he's my friend and my teacher, one of them, thinks that they aren't, but I contended with him. It was a great discussion. He presented a passage which is difficult to ignore. I'll read that. Then I presented why I believe they're still God's chosen people. So I think they are. There are good arguments on both sides. So let's start with this. Let's start with his. He said that the old covenant was a physical one, which it was, right? It was the law. And now it's spiritual, which I agree. The law versus the new covenant, the old versus the new. I will write it on their hearts and in their minds. Jesus came in on a donkey, and they rejected him after the money changers. When I brought up a verse, he told me to look in Matthew 23, which happened to be the verse I quoted to him. I said, doesn't it say that God won't accept them until the Jews say, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." Does that mean that they will be saved? Why would Jesus say that otherwise? Maybe that means nothing, but maybe he just said it. I'll read the whole paragraph. Jesus laments over Jerusalem. So I think this is Matthew 23:37. This is NKJV. "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the one who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. See, your house has left you desolate. For I say to you, you shall see me no more until you say, Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." So, to me, that does sound final. Does that not sound final to you? It sounds that way. And it's a pretty big paragraph. It's almost like looking at Matthew 24. I can see why someone would think so. It's pretty clear. I'm not as good as recalling verses as people who have been reading the Bible for like 30 or 50 years. So at that point I said, and I said, I think it's in Isaiah, can a nation be born in one day? Didn't God regather his people from the four corners? I think so. 2,000 years of not being a nation, it appeared so, right? And that's a long period of history. It's true that the Jews were rebellious and stiff-necked more than anyone else. I said in 1948, a nation was born in a day with David Ben-Gurion and Harry Truman, the U.S. president, recognizing Israel when they got in a war. Not only that, but I know my history of war. How did little tiny Israel survive against all the odds about, I think it was more than 3 times, but it was like 3 major times, with Russian-backed Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and others. I think another one was Palestine. He said it's still physical Israel, but it appeared like God was protecting them. And in one battle, it was 67 or 73, they had control of the Golan Heights, and they had like 12 British Centurion tanks, which were much better than the T-55 and T-62. And they were on the heights, and there was like 1,000 tanks coming at like 12 tanks, and they took out so many of them, and they completely turned them back. When you see things like that, so all these major wars were literal David versus Goliath wins, and yes, the Americans were backing them up, but it was them fighting. I guess you can't just believe in your heart something the scripture doesn't say. I do believe God will rejoin to the Jews, or else why else? Why else would Paul always say first to the Jew, then to the Greek, or judgment first to the Jew, then to the Greek? I'll have to research, but God says he'll never forsake the Jews through David's seed. Did he not say that? Or was that just through the book of Kings? So, and then I got to take another break and then read this. It's very tough for me to speak, but this part is interesting right here. This is why I don't make videos later in the day. It's very tough for me. The more I walk, the more I eat, the more my abdomen hurts, the more it's difficult to speak. So I got off the phone. I'm like, I don't, I have to find out this truth because it's gonna bug me. So this is what I found. I said, well, didn't the gospel went over to the Gentiles, right? And I remembered in my mind that didn't God say that he was going to provoke the Jews to jealousy? So I'm going to read this. So I forget exactly where this is now. Anyways, but it's in Paul's epistles anyways. So this is Romans 11:11. Israel's rejection not final. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Certainly not. But through their fall, to provoke them to jealousy, salvation has come to the Gentiles. Now, I'm going to say before I continue that the Jews are not more special than the Gentiles, okay? They are God's chosen people. I guess you have to keep in mind that this was his plan all along, right? This was the plan. God knew this. This was his plan all along, so. Now, if their fall is riches for the world, and their failure riches for the Gentiles, how much more is their fullness? For I speak to you Gentiles, inasmuch as I am an apostle to the Gentiles, I magnify my ministry, if by any means I may provoke to jealousy those who are my flesh, and save some of them. For if their being cast away is reconciling of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? For if the first fruit is holy, the lump is also holy. And if the root is holy, so are the branches. And if some of the branches were broken off, and you, being a wild olive tree, don't boast against the branches. But if you do boast, remember that you don't support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off that I might be grafted in. Well said. Because of unbelief they were broken off, and you stand by faith. Be not haughty, but fear. For if God didn't spare the natural branches, he may not spare you either. Therefore consider the goodness and severity of God, and those who fell. On those who fell, severity, but towards you, goodness, if you continue in his goodness. Otherwise, you'll be cut off. I'm getting really breathless. And they also, if they do continue in unbelief, we will be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again. For if you were cut out of the olive tree, which is wild by nature, and were grafted contrary to nature into a cultivated olive tree, how much more will these, who are natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? Concerning the gospel, they are enemies for your sake. But concerning the election, they are beloved for the sake of the fathers. For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable. For as you were once disobedient to God, yet now have obtained mercy through their disobedience, even so, even these also, it's very, very tough to speak. Sorry, I'll get over that. Give me a second here, guys. Almost done. Even so, these have also been disobedient. These also have now been disobedient, that through the mercy shown to you, they also may obtain mercy. For God has committed them all to disobedience, that he may have mercy on all. Psalm 94, verse 14. I'm researching this since I had that discussion with that person. For the Lord will not cast off his people, neither will he forsake his inheritance. But judgment shall return unto righteousness, and all the upright in heart shall follow it. So my own conclusion is God hasn't rejected them, but he sure distanced himself from them for good reason, for not recognizing who the Messiah was, and all the killing they killed all the prophets and messengers. The Bible was turned over to the Gentiles to provoke them to jealousy, and many verses in the prophets say that God will save the Gentiles. God doesn't recognize a Jew outwardly, but those who are one inwardly. Also, there are Judeo-Christians. There are Judeo-Christians. So listen to the statistic, and I'm going to cut this video off. At the end of 2022, Christians made up 1.9, so 2%, 1.9% of Israeli population, numbering approximately 185,000. 75% of that number of the Christians in Israel are Arab Christians. Jews are not more special than us in any way. They are God's chosen people, but nothing about them makes them better than us. I'd like to know your thoughts on this. Will the Jews ever say those words, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord"? I hope they do. It says in Revelations that only, I believe it says, 1/3 of them will survive. Thanks for watching today's video. Very difficult to speak, very tough.